Maybe you're new to MMOs, or maybe you've been playing for a little while and are looking for some ideas on how to improve your game. Today, I've got 9 great pieces of mechanical advice for you to carry to just about any MMORPG you might play. My first heavy MMORPG experience was back in World of Warcraft's Wrath of the Lich King. When I started trying to get better at PvP and work towards arenas, my friend and arena partner taught me a lot. Probably the single biggest game-changing tip I ever got for playing MMOs was to switch to mouse turning only and switch my A and D keys to strafing rather than turning. I laughed at this suggestion at the time and could not understand, but it didn't take long for me to understand how much better it really was and fall in love with it. If you're not familiar, mouse turning is where you hold down, typically the right mouse button in an MMO, which will lock your camera and your character to the movements of your mouse. Doing this allowed me to be much faster with responding to evolving situations compared to trying to turn my character like a tank. Since you're turning your character constantly with the right mouse button, you're free to switch up your A and D keys from turning over to strafing. This allows you to kite easily if needed, or simply circle strafe around bosses and the like, and always be situationally aware. I've noticed some games like Guild Wars 2 and now World of Warcraft have added a similar toggle mode called Action Cam, where your camera always follows the mouse, but I still prefer my method since Action Cam also changes how targeting works a little bit depending on the situation you can find yourself in. And also, rather than having a toggle, I simply let go of the mouse button. Another huge tip from my fledgling PvP education was learning to embrace full keybind customization. I used keybinds, I was never a mouse click only person, but some spells or abilities I would still click because I simply couldn't reach from WASD over to the 8 key or beyond on my keyboard easily. I've got small hands. I had used a bit of the Alt-Shift or Control-R keybinding, but some games, like WoW, have focused targeting casting, which can need one of those to function. So, what I begrudgingly tried at the behest of my arena partner was using some of my normal letter keys for ability. The logic is sound, but it can take some adjustment. For some examples, in WoW, I played Mage, and my counterspell interrupt became G, my polymorph became F. Both are extremely close to WASD and easy to hit, and to this day I typically put any of my character's dedicated interrupt spells on G, and anything like a long form crowd control on F, just because my muscle memory is that strong. In Guild Wars 2, my dodge key is E, because it's right next to my movement keys.
You've got dodge on E?
You what?
Despite Mukluk's outrage, which is fine, you've got to disappoint your heroes at some point in your life, I find it super convenient and have never managed to roll myself off of a cliff to ruin a raid. So it works for me. So play around with this idea. Even if you have to rebind or unbind some menu buttons that you can normally just click instead, those are outside of combat. If it can make your combat experience more fluid, that's going to be the most important thing. I was hesitant at first, but it turned out to be a huge game changer. But before you go rebinding anything, let's consider this next tip first. This piece of advice was huge for not even just MMOs, but every game I play. If you don't have one and you're getting serious about playing more MMOs, I highly recommend you look to pick up an MMO gaming mouse. This is obviously not free. It's the only tip on the list that actually costs any money. But if you can't afford it or put it on a birthday or Christmas list to hopefully get one, it can be very helpful, though it will absolutely take some time for you to get used to it. Do not try to use it for the first time on raid night. These days I've been using the Corsair Scimitar RGB Elite, and there's an Amazon affiliate link down in the description and up in the corner of the video now. If you'd like to pick one up and support our ongoing adventure here on the channel and your gameplay, that'd be pretty awesome. Now, I realized once I got one of these MMO mice, I used to death grip my mouse with my thumb, so it took a while to get used to holding it, and muscle memory for the thumb buttons took some time. But once I did, I have literally not purchased or used another type of mouse willingly since. These mice can even have onboard custom macro support with the software settings, so you can get really advanced with them. There are some things to keep in mind, and I do have some pieces of advice for you once you get it. Firstly, like I said, adjustment period. For a while, you're gonna feel like you're splashing around in the water. Your brain needs time to wire your thumb to connect with your gaming eyeballs. When you make the switch, plan on doing some easier content for possibly several days. Go hit some questing to try and knock out rep farming or achievements or whatever. Once you feel more comfortable, you can work your way into some easier group content and keep it going up and up. You could even roll a new character if you like making alt characters, but I prefer to get used to control adjustments on the character I'll be playing the most, since that's the most important to get used to. Secondly, when you get it, see where your thumb naturally falls at rest on the mouse and is comfortable. If the way you hold it, your thumb is lined up with the 4 or 7 rows, then shift those over to be your more primary lines of abilities, since your thumb will tend to float there and be comfortable. But if you pick up the Corsair Scimitar I linked in the description, it actually has this really cool feature where you can unlock the thumb key panel and slide it around a little bit to find your preferred spot to make it as comfortable as possible for you, which I thought was really cool, although mine is all the way forward just like all the other mice I've ever used. Lastly, and we're going to go further in depth on this whole concept later in the video, make your UI work for you. Games typically have straight horizontal or vertical bars to work with, but you can work around this. With WoW, what I did was use my bartender to make my bars 3 wide and 4 tall, so it was the exact pattern of the buttons on the mouse. This was hugely helpful, especially when getting used to the new layouts. If your game doesn't have a feature like this, but you like the idea, you could do what I show here in Lord of the Rings Online, where I've spanned abilities and keybinds across multiple bars to create that same stacked effect, even though it's 4 bars. It's a little bit more effort, but if it works for you, it works for you. Now I have some more thoughts on UI stuff, but we'll come to those thoughts later. For now, I want to talk about making money in MMOs. This right here is one of my biggest pitfalls in MMOs and games in general to this day. If you want to make your life in MMOs easier and take it to the next level, you need to think about money. Money making can vary wildly between games, but one thing I've found is relatively consistent across all of them that you can do anytime you start a new game or new character is focus on gathering professions. If the game has limited professions, stuff like mining, herb lore, forestry, you know what I'm talking about. Materials gathering in games is often one of the easiest ways to make steady money, and leveling that up with your character can generate you a lot of simple, nearly passive profit as you're already walking past this stuff while doing your quests. Money can change your entire gameplay loop. It's like a legal cheat code. You can avoid grinding you don't want to do, power level later crafting professions on other characters to save so much time, and so much more. It can be very tempting to level up crafting so you can make your own gear, but I've found most of the time the actual usefulness of crafting gear is very low compared to quest rewards and dungeon rewards, at least until you get to a level cap. However, if you just have to have crafting, try to aim for something that would be more helpful for all of your future characters. Professions that create jewelry and accessories, or enchant existing gear, or cooking are generally some pretty universal ones. That way you're maximizing your account-wide impact as early as possible. But if that's just not appealing to you, I'm not the fun police. Do whatever you want. All right, next we're talking about education. I know, it's scary, but hear me out. This is something that changed my gameplay dramatically, especially for PvP modes and trying to make my own builds. Take the time to read through and understand your abilities and your skill trees thoroughly. It can be dense when you're new to a game or even a class, but that's okay. Even if it takes a bunch of time for you to firmly grasp it, it's good. I used to just pull builds off the internet, slap them on my toon, read through recommended skills and playstyles quick, and then go out and flail around with it. And that can work to an extent, but if you want to take things to the next level, you need to take the time early on to understand why certain things are working together, why you use certain skills in certain orders or in certain situations. Don't just know that your rotation is 4, 3, 2, 2, 1, repeat infinitely until you or the boss dies. Know why you're pressing those buttons in that order, because when shit hits the fan, and you know it will, you'll know how and why to adjust. You'll also become a better player, be able to pick up future builds faster, and you'll start to find it easier to make your own effective builds. This next tip goes hand in hand with this one, and that is stop button mashing. I'm talking to myself here, sorry. But you too. Seriously, I've had this problem my entire gaming career. It's only the last year or so I've truly started to work hard at stopping it. But at the age of 30, I'm every bit of 25 years into a button mashing habit at this point, so it's a struggle. When I do manage to relax and stop mashing buttons, I find that I'm a lot more relaxed in the game, especially in PvP fights. But not only that, being more relaxed helps me focus on the bigger picture and notice more than I otherwise would from being tunnel visioned on button mashing. Another huge problem you can avoid with button mashing is skill queuing. Some games have a huge skill queue lag, and you can find yourself casting the wrong spell or ability due to this and really screw yourself over, especially in PvP. This could mean the difference between virtual life and death. And as we all know, when you die in the game, you die in real life. Now, we're going back to making your UI work for you. I briefly mentioned this concept when talking about MMO mice, but it goes so much deeper than that. So let's take a look at this default classic UI layout from World of Warcraft. Now, we all know the action in any MMO is going to be in the center of the screen. Here, but tell me, where's your health bar? Oh yeah, it's in the corner. Where's your party's health information? Oh yeah, it's on the side of the screen. Do you see where I'm going with this? When you notice you have problems, find the solution. I used to have problems keeping track of my health and mana, often ending up surprised by things. So I moved my UI elements closer to the center. I recently returned to Poke at WoW a bit and noticed they've made this a new default, which I thought was really cool. If you're a healer and you struggle to keep track of your group's health, move it closer to somewhere your eyes tend to go. But we can do even more than that. A lot of games have focus target options available, which once you set it, will leave the information of that creature up on the screen no matter who you target. You can put these somewhere very specific to allow for better tracking. Healers, you could maybe put your focus target under your own status bar so you can keep track of your tank even when group healing. DPS, you can do the same thing with the boss, so if you need to switch to burn ads, you can easily go right back to the boss. There are also sometimes even keybinds in the settings, which will allow you to, no matter who you target, cast an ability on your focus target, which can be huge to do focused interrupts or heal your tank quick while still focusing on that hunter who ninja pulled and is about to be bleeding on the ground. But this brings me to an even bigger point, which is explore your options. I'm so bad at this, it's kind of funny to even say this out loud. I was actually going through my settings in Guild Wars 2 while getting inspiration for this video and realized that Guild Wars 2 has a focus target system, albeit much lighter in utility than most, which I did not realize after playing for 12 some years now, because I never looked. You can find all sorts of cool settings in Guild Wars 2. You can have certain elements of the UI disappear when you get into combat, or only appear in combat. There's really an interesting amount of settings that games will just never tell you about that could be potentially game-changing for one person that another would never care about. So take some time, explore all of your options. But sometimes, no matter how deep the options are, there's no fix for something that really bothers you. Which brings me to my final point. Look into getting add-ons or mods for your game to fix your pain points. This is going to vary wildly for your specific game. You may not even want to deal with it for every game. I know I don't, but it can be virtual life changing. You can get add-ons that add in radial menus for things like mounts in Guild Wars 2. Inventory management, auction hall management, quest management. There's so many things, so many amazing add-ons that people in the communities you are a part of have spent tons of time and put their heart into because they want to make the experience for their favorite game better for people. But your mileage can definitely vary depending on your personal preferences and how easy it is to mod the game. For example, I love add-ons in WoW, but I find Guild Wars 2 add-ons very tedious to update and manage for how little I feel they add to my experience the way I play the game. Ha! Surprise! I've got one more bonus tip for you. It's one I haven't put into a video recently, and it's the single most important tip I can give you. Remember to have fun. It's a game. It's fun to get better at games, make things easier, and optimize both our characters and ourselves. I love it. That's why I do what I do. But you gotta remember to enjoy the process. And if you want to hear my story on looking back on the 2010s between optimization and fun in MMOs, this video right here was really fun to make and share my story with all of you.